Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. I am found, I am yours, I am loved, I'm made pure, I have life, I can breathe, I am healed, I am free. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true, 'cause I am found, I am yours, I am loved, I'm made pure, I have life, I can breathe, I am healed, I am free. You are strong, you are sure, you are light, you endure, you are good, always true, you are light, breaking through. Oh, here's
Let's all raise our voices and sing together. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my a nice deep breath in, put your hand on your heart, feel your heart beat. And just have a moment of inner reflection, contemplation, acknowledging today is a holy day. Let's all use the energy of our gathering tonight to see ourselves as instruments of peace, as conduits of love and compassion, as stewards of God's grace. Tonight we open with a prayer according to the Jewish tradition, specifically for tonight, being the sacred time of Yom Kippur. To those I may have wronged, I ask forgiveness. To those I may have helped, I wish I had done more. To those I neglected to help, I ask for understanding. And to those who helped me, I want to thank you with all my heart. So let's give thanks with all our heart to those who have helped us. Even the unlikely helpers, those who put blocks and bruises on our path so that we could learn through them, so we could grow through them. We have to be thankful for those as well. So tonight we say thank you. We're especially grateful for this opportunity to be together, to learn how to move beyond talking about A Course in Miracles into living A Course in Miracles, and as a conduit of that principle of living, of that way of living, of that warrior spiritual spirit, I make a dedication. I set an intention, knowing that I will pray harder and rise higher, forgive steadily and love readily. In all that I do as I learn to change my mind about the world and learn to see with new eyes, eyes of love, eyes of Christ. And on this holy day, we ask for all the angels and saints, all the avatars, all the great ones who went before us. Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Kali, Father Abraham, Mother Mary. We ask for all that is holy and sacred to bless us as we set our intention to bless others. Nice deep breath. Together we breathe a prayer of gratitude and give thanks. Give thanks. Thank you everyone for being here. Happy Thursday, happy Holy Thursday. So it's a holy day indeed. The Jewish tradition on this day is to say, may your name be inscribed and sealed on the book of life. May your name be inscribed and sealed in the book of life. Meaning, you are loved, you are watched, you are wanted, you are needed. And because of that, imagine, can you just imagine, some angelic scribe somewhere, just making sure that your name is there in the heavens, inscribed and sealed. It means you're a good deal. That means you are beloved. That's what we're here to do. We're here to walk and talk the words of compassion, words of kindness, words of peace. Not like soapbox talkers, but just how we live our life, just by how we move through the world, just by who we are and how we are in the world. And sometimes, a theme that has come up over and over the years of doing coursework is people talking about how they are really working on forgiveness, but they have found that the hardest forgiveness is of themselves. And I've heard people who just seem to be just filled with transformation and joy over the ways in which they saw the change in them as a result of doing their spiritual work. And forgiving the past, forgiving seeming betrayals and heartaches, and yet having the hardest time forgiving themselves. So when we hear about fear being one of our major attributes in this life, Some of it is that those old memories or those old messages saying, don't forget what you did, don't forget what you really are. And we're here to rise above that. And I just happened to stumble across a talk by this guy. It's my first knowing of him. You might know of him. He's a monk by the name of Gelong Thubin, or Tubin, Thuben, Gelong Thubin. And he had this video called Happiness, A Monk's Guide to Happiness, something like that. But what he talked about was that when he went in to be a monk, he thought he would just like sort of live a monk's life for about a year. Then he made a dedication to being a monk, and he learned how to really get into a state of deep meditation. And then he said after 12 years of being a deeply dedicated monk, he started having severe anxiety and depression. Severe anxiety, severe depression. And what he realized when he started digging deep was that all that time in meditation he was using as a way to escape from his fears and his pain and his memories. And once he allowed those channels to come up, suddenly he was just filled with memories of things he thought were horrible about himself. And messages that he had never healed, had never dealt with in any way. And he heard messages, and we all have these messages about love yourself, be compassionate with yourself. And he asked the question, well, how do you do that? It's my question too often, is like, how do you do that? And what he said, and I love this, he said, I found compassion for the part of my brain that I found repulsive. So instead of beating himself up, the whole person, he just focused on that part. We could just make it up. This is the part of my brain that tells me horrible messages about myself, reminds me of bad things I did in the past, and wants me to be guilty. The Course says guilt is the twin to fear, the twin brother of fear. We're living in fear and guilt, and that's what we're trying to heal. So there's that part of our brain that holds on to that memory, holds on to wanting to make sure that we don't feel too good about ourselves, because what about the horror? What about those horrible memories? And so what he said was he focused on having compassion on the part of the brain that held on to those horrible memories and that used them against him, regardless of how much he had changed, regardless of how much higher he had strived and achieved. And I love the idea of, instead of using some blanket spiritual platitudes of love yourself, you can really focus down to a compartmentalization of a part of you that it doesn't define who you really are. It's just a part of you that's working in the old files. And it's pulling up these old files and shoving them in your face, and then you're going, oh yeah, that's right, I'm horrible, I'm a bad person, I did this, I did that. I have so much guilt about that, I feel so bad about who I was and who I am as a result of who I am. And he's saying, have compassion on that part of the brain, and as you have compassion on it, you simmer it down. You simmer it down like a parent soothing a crying child, until you start letting the past be where it was and recognizing yourself for who you are now, for how far you've come. Even if it's just baby steps, you still took those baby steps, and they still have value. So just after I discovered him, as if that wasn't enough, which I thought was pretty good, I was sending it out to everybody. I don't know if everybody here got a copy, but I was sending it out. I thought it was such a great talk. Then I came across this guy. His name is John Rodell. Somebody posted something by him, and so of course I looked into him. He has a Facebook page called Hey God, Hey John. And on that Facebook page, he posts his conversations with God. But it's not Neil Donald Walsh kind of conversations. It's a little more private than that. So this is one of those conversations. And it goes along with what I was just saying about having compassion for that part of your brain that's suffering because of something you did in the past that you keep bringing to your present. So this is John talking to God. He says, hey God. God says, hey John. John says, I can't seem to forgive myself. For what? For having depression. And God says, oh, you will never be able to forgive yourself for that, because it's not your fault. You didn't cause this. This weight on your chest, the knot in your stomach, the fog in your brain, the exhaustion in your bones, the tears in your eyes, the darkness of your thoughts, the emptiness in your soul, the friends that abandon you, the lack of hope you feel, endless nights of despair, the tremble in your voice, the crawling under your skin, the coldness in your blood, the terrible sadness that blankets you, the feeling of drowning in anxiety, the numbness that watches over you. None of it is your fault. It's not your fault. Put 2 fingers on your pulse. Feel your heartbeat. You're still alive. What a miracle. The shadow of depression has tried to destroy you, but can't. You're still here. You have endured suffering, and you are still here. And I am so grateful. We need you. The world needs you. The poison that depression wants you to drink is filled with lies. You aren't being punished. You aren't cursed. You aren't deserving of this pain, but you sure as hell are going to survive it. Your scars will be made into violin strings. Your tears will be made into a riptide of courage. Your pain will be made into a story of survival because you did nothing wrong. You just need to love yourself. You just need to love this self. So write this down. I need to love myself. There's nothing to be forgiven for. I need to love myself. Write it over and over and over. Write it on paper. Write it on your skin. Write it on the walls. Write it in the sand. Anywhere where you will keep reading it so many times that you can't help but believe it. So hold on. Your depression is not going to destroy you or define you. You are a beautiful work of creation, like a piece of ornate pottery forged in fire. You haven't been burned by the flames. You have been made into art. I love you. This isn't your fault. Stop saying you're sorry. So I felt like those were very nice, compatible finds this week, and especially poignant on a day like today, which is a Day of Atonement. You know, so a Day of Atonement is a time, the past 10 days have been a time of reflection and contemplation, looking at where we could do better, be better, rise higher. It's not about beating ourselves up. And it's atonement from a Course perspective, in the sense that we are recognizing our unity with one another. We're recognizing our at-one-ment. We are recognizing and doing this work that helps us to see each other and see our circumstances and see our lives from a higher perspective, a perspective of Christ vision, perspective of understanding some ultimate truths, as opposed to the mundane stuff that scares us and trips us up at times. So I was really thinking about doing chapter 22 gems, but then something came to my attention. So you know, I have to pay attention when it comes to my attention. So we're gonna do lessons instead. Lesson 257. Now here's the thing that I think is pretty interesting. We're talking about this time of reflection and how atonement, from a Course in Miracles perspective, is the recognition of who we are. But it's also, and we said this just last week, it's also a remembering. We're not really learning new information. We're discarding old information. We're deconstructing the information of the ego that's been laid upon us year after year after year after year, decades after decades, and we're going back to the rawness of the truth of who we are to remember who we are. That's what the Course is telling us throughout the whole text that we've been reading, for those of you who are following the challenge, and even in the lessons. So an interesting thing came to my attention. Lesson 257 through 60, 4 lessons in a row, start with "Let me remember." So 257 says, "Let me remember what my purpose is." 258 says, "Let me remember that my goal is God." 259 says, "Let me remember there is no sin." 260 says, "Let me remember God created me." So isn't that interesting? Now we're getting to more than halfway through the book, and this is the second half of the workbook itself, which was specifically designed in having us dig deeper. That was the whole point of the second part, was we've already done the deconstruction work, and now we're working on walking the talk. And so I wanted to get some perspective on why we have these 4 in a row that start out with "Let me remember." So I turned to Ken Wapnick in his commentary. Lisa, I'm on page 65. He says, "These next 4 lessons begin with the phrase, 'Let me remember.' This is important because it tells us our true purpose of forgiveness rests in the mind where the truth is. We choose to forget because we wanted to remember only our individual identity, but these lessons help us change our mind." He goes on to say, at least I'm on the second set of columns here. We can say that the purpose of A Course in Miracles is to have us see our day, our everyday, as having a single unified purpose, learning to recognize that our lives are classrooms in forgiveness. And we have a teacher who's here to guide us and instruct us. The Course throughout is telling us that we have a purpose. Let us not forget what our purpose is. Let me remember what my purpose is. So I'm going to read 257 in the workbook. Let me remember what my purpose is. If I forget my goal, I can be but confused, unsure of what I am, and thus conflicted in my actions. No one can serve contradictory goals and serve them well. Nor can he function without deep distress and great depression. Let us therefore be determined to remember what we want today, that we may unify our thoughts and actions meaningfully and achieve only what God would have us do this day. So what would God have us do? Here we have a prayer, if you want to say it with me. Father, forgiveness is your chosen means for our salvation. Let us not forget today that we can have no will but yours, and thus our purpose must be yours as well, if we would reach the peace you will have for us. So what does that all mean? The message never changes. The message never changes. It's just, like at what point in like 20 years of reading the same thing do I go, oh, aha, I got it now, right? And so it's really a matter of how we hear what we hear and what we hear if we can hear, right? If we have the ears to hear. So every now and then it says the same thing but with different words so that we can have those aha moments, like suddenly it seeps in. Right? So it's always telling us continuously throughout the whole thing, let me remember what my purpose is. Let me remember that my thoughts are joined with God. My mind is very holy. It's constantly remember that we are so much more deeply connected to God, to Source, when we take the time to go inward and be at peace and have the quietness that only we know how to access. Right? You know how to step out of the chaos. It's just a decision about whether or not you're going to. So you'll be going through your day. How many people went with the 12 o'clock challenge this week? I don't know if you all remember. I was saying last week that for the past year and a half, I've been at 12 o'clock, I stop and do a 5-minute song or a series of songs or whatever with the people at work. And I was inviting you all to do it with me. So what is our purpose, right? We're always looking at, well, what is my purpose? Let me remember what my purpose is. And my purpose is always going to come back to that opportunity to be the voice of peace, the voice of compassion, the voice of kindness for myself and for you. But how can I remember that if I can't forgive myself, if I can't forgive you, if I can't forgive the past, if I keep running it over and over and over in my mind? How am I going to find peace? And so this is just saying, let me remember what my purpose is. My purpose is to do that every single day, to find that moment of peace, to find that little piece of peace. A little piece of peace. I can find it and use it, even if it's only for a few minutes of release from the chaos. Dear Lisa.
I had to figure out a way to write this, just because it's so simple, but it's so powerful. So I have, my happiness is my happiness is God's will, which is my will without judgment and full of forgiving.
Right, so everything is an opportunity.
For me, this little ditty that I did helps me kind of just focus in on, because I hear God's will all the time, people speaking about it, and I hear different ways that people interpret that. And I need, for me, to be in a good place to talk with people about that without preaching or whatever. Affirm my belief in what God's will is. And that's what this is. My will is God's will without my schmutz all over it.
Right, well, the thing is that the Course is constantly remembers that my will is God's will and God's will is my will. If you understand that what your will is, no matter what you're doing, whatever you're going through the world, you live in the happy dream, what is it that you're doing? You're trying to be happy, you're trying to be at peace, you're trying to find a way to feel good, right? And so that is God's will. God's will is that you have joy, that you have peace. And so if you're going to go through life finding a way to find peace and joy, then you do it with the purpose of continuously to keep your heart open, right? Because you can be real happy with your new car and your stuff and things that are making you happy, but if you still begrudging the past, if you still have anger, if you even towards yourself, you're not going to really be at deep peace, because every time you have those memories, remember those memories that are tripping you up, you're going to come out of peace. And so when people say, well, I don't want to forgive because it was such a horrible thing that person did. Well, then you're the one who's imprisoned. You are the one who's maintained the prison door shut. When, you know what, the key's sitting right there, you can go out. And we all do it. We all do it. And that's why this is spiritual practice. This is why we have these lessons. And this is why it says over and over again for the next 4 days, let me remember, let me remember, let me remember what my purpose is. If I'm tripped up, if I'm emotionally triggered, and I forget my purpose even for a moment, when I have that moment of spiritual amnesia, right? At the end of the day, I can set my intention to do better and be better, and to continuously hold the high watch, have the high watch over my own thoughts, over my own intentions, over the way that I show up in the world. So that was the Ken Wapnick is one interpretation. This is the Robert Purry interpretation. He said, what if today I remember that forgiveness is my only purpose? What if I realize that whatever else happens, if I forgive everything and everything I see and everyone I see, I have fulfilled my function? What if I realize that all the things I think are important and nothing compared to this is nothing compared to this purpose that I have? When I'm behind the slow driver while trying to get someplace on time, forgiving is my purpose, not getting there on time. In any situation of conflict, forgiveness is my goal, not winning. When the person from whom I am seeking signs of love fails to respond, forgiveness is my goal, not getting the response I'm looking for, and so on. What kind of difference would it make if I really made forgiveness my primary goal and my only goal? So that's because that's our function. Forgiveness is my function. Forgiveness is my daily challenge, my daily task. So we just keep trying to rise to the occasion. Any comments?
Ali Ferreira says, my will is God's will and God's will is my will. I love this so much.
Ali, thank you, thank you. I'm glad you wrote it down there, because that's great, that's great.
And Kim,
Glad you're here.
Kim says a piece of peace.
A piece of peace. A piece of peace. Un pedacito. Okay, how's our time?
29.
Say it again.
7:29.
Oh, we're good. So, okay, so remember, we're going to do let us remember, let us remember. So let me remember that my goal is God. All that is needful is to train our minds to overlook all little senseless aims and to remember that our goal is God. You know, sometimes we go, what do you mean my senseless aims, right? My aims are so important because what I'm doing is so important. And you know what? In this particular realm of semi illusion, and I say semi because at this moment I'm talking to you, I feel very real, right? We all feel very real, and it's hard for us to say that anything is meaningless. And so when we try to step outside and look at it more objectively, it's like it's all so temporary, it's all so fluid, it's all just an opportunity to just sort of enjoy the view instead of focusing on the chaos. Just enjoy it. Just try. You know, this is what we're all trying to do, is get to that place of the great cosmic giggle, right? To be able to look at life from a place of not so serious, not everything so serious. What happened?
I thought it was a cosmic giggle.
Yeah. All right, so let's see what we say here. Shall we continue to allow God's grace to shine in unawareness while the toys and trinkets of the world are sought instead? God is our only goal, our only love. We have no aim but to remember Him. Remember earlier, there's another lesson where it talks about the broken toys that we play with. You know, not that we're not here to enjoy, because there's all sorts of things to enjoy. But what it's saying is that the toys are the things that we think are going to bring us happiness beyond the ultimate truth of who we are, right? So there's like the happiness of our daily living. Then there's the ultimate happiness of whatever happens during that daily living cannot be disturbed. And that's where it goes, where we go deeper and we can rise higher. So our goal is that connection. It's all about the connection with Source, with God, whatever it is that you call that Source for you. Our goal is but to follow the way that leads back to God. We have no goal but this. What could we want but to remember God? What could we seek but our true identity? Why? Because our identity is beloved and pure and connected. So we're always trying to get back to that sense of connection. And the toys are all the things we try to get the sense of connection without it being anything other than just the stuff of this world. So today it could be chocolate ice cream or those cookies that Lisa brought. You know, those bring me joy in the moment. In fact, they got me feeling a little bit sugar buzzy. But it's all about how connected, how attached we are to those things and what's going to happen if we don't have those things. By the way, oh, wait a minute, I have an announcement. Speaking of cookies.
Yes.
Lisa and Paul are going to be moving away. They're going to be moving to North Florida. So they'll be with us on the line, or maybe we'll set up a special Zoom or something for them. But here, I've gotten attached to their cookies. They bring me cookies every week. So this is how we're going to talk about it. By the way, I'm going to miss you very much, and I love you very much. But we'll get back to that. I'm trying to make an analogy here. So first of all, I'd let you know that they're leaving, which is really sad for me and for all of us here. But secondly, it's like I can be so happy with these cookies because, you know, I just had dinner and it was like perfect, and they come in and we have like from 6:30 to 7, we have like our social time, like we just all hang out. And we eat cookies if the cookies are here. So that's going to change, right? You guys are leaving, and there's going to be, you know, it's going to be different, right? And so we adjust. We start adjusting to your absence, to the change, maybe the change of the people. We'll suffer a little bit too. But I'm just saying, we go through these changes, right? Because it's all our different levels of attachment. So because we're a spiritual family, we're going to try and you know, act like grown-ups about it, or grown spiritual warriors about it. But at the same time, we may not always feel it, right? So we're going through this human experience, and we're trying to stay connected to the spiritual experience. So all of that happens at once because we're walking this path. We're constantly walking the path and looking at how we can love and let go, right? Love and not be attached. Watch out for those attachments and expectations, all that stuff that trips us up. And then 259, let me remember there is no sin. This is a tough one. You know, this one is tough for us, our egos, not in the ultimate sense of what's tough. You know, I keep going back to that analogy of the pendulum, you know, the pendulum that checks the energy. And we had that experiment in one of the student classes where they were checking different chakras, different people, and, you know, everybody had different levels of energy. But when you got beyond the head, when you got to this universal place, everybody's energy was exactly the same. And so when I see these comments in the Course that tell us there's no sin, our brothers and sisters, you know, sin, and you start thinking, but what about the Manson murders? You know, well, you know, whatever comes through your mind, you might think, well, how can you say that's not sin? And the higher self says, well, don't forget that pendulum swings the same. So you got Charles Manson, you got Mother Teresa. Guess what? When you get to that place of unified consciousness where they're brothers and sisters in some other realm, the energy is going to be exactly the same. Because we move out of the personality, we move out of the earthly experience into the recognition that beyond all of this, there's a unified sense of brotherhood and sisterhood. And in that unified sonship, there is no sin. Sin is the only thought that makes the goal of God seem unattainable. What else could blind us to the obvious and make the strange and distorted seem more clear? What else but sin engenders our attacks? And remember, sin in the Course in Miracles is just saying it's mistakes in need of correction. Just mistakes in need of correction. But we, as those who think we have the right to judge the process, start getting tripped up because we start dividing camps, right? These are the good guys, these are the bad guys. I'm one of the good guys, you're one of the bad guys, and then we want to try and convince everybody else to believe us. Who's the good guy and who's the bad guy? So we do that constantly judging. You know, I started to pay more attention to my own instant judgments. And so today, because I was thinking, you actually said that one time. You go, I judge everybody, you know, and you notice that you do, and then it's like, what are you going to do about it, right? Are you going to change your mind? That's the miracle, right? The mind is the shifting of the mind. But because I was thinking about it, because I said, I'm just going to watch how much I judge. So I go to the morning meeting, and I realized that every single person in the meeting had the potential to annoy me if I let myself just keep going with my judgments. And I was like, oh, can't he speak up? Can he be more? It's like I started doing this whole thing, and I was like, oh, look at you.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I did that to myself one day too. And I was like, I saw somebody walking down the street, and I was like, why is she wearing that hat or scarf or something? I'm like, what the hell do you care?
So just imagine, right? Yes, right, exactly.
What is the matter
So
with you?
if we start noticing those things about us, imagine for how long our mind has entertained that kind of thinking, not just about others, but about ourselves. Just think about all the energy you've put into that judgmental way of thinking.
Exhausting.
But you didn't know it was exhausting because for the most part you just did it like, oh, I'm so right and they're all so wrong.
But when you think about it, it's exhausting.
So that's what we're learning now. That we're gonna, when we realize how silly it is to entertain those thoughts, then we start we start having the opportunity and the ability to change the way we see. We're going to change the way we see. We're going to change the way we think. We're going to change the way we think. We're going to change the way we see. And ultimately, we're going to change the way we interact. Because what's going on in our minds, we shift our minds. The first part of the miracle is this changing of your mind. The second part of the miracle is how you then change yourself. Change your mind and then change yourself. Comment? No? Let's read that prayer. Father, I would not be insane today. I wouldn't. Let's do it again. I would not be insane today. I would not be afraid of love, nor seek refuge in its opposite. For love can have no opposite. You are the source of everything there is, and everything that is remains with you, and you with it. Sweet. Did you have any commentary there from? I didn't go into this one for Ken Wapnick.
I just underlined, it was right after the Father, I would not be insane today. He says the thread that runs through every lesson is the insanity of our mistaken thoughts. And I think the fact that he uses insanity, the Course uses the word insanity, may rub some people the wrong way, probably at times. In the past rubbed me the wrong way, but it's insane, and there's no other word that I can think of other than insanity.
Right. And the more we pay attention to it, the
Yes.
more we recognize it, just like when you hear your thoughts of judgment. There's a part of the text that says, you and your brother will always have moments of insanity, and whoever is more insane in the moment should then thank the other one for being a mirror, for being an opportunity for them to be a blessing. I thought, wow, let's just all stretch that far. That's the warrior pose for sure.
Yeah.
That is the warrior pose. Which reminds me, I wanted to tell you guys, a lot of you know that I've had this hip injury, and I've been trying all kinds of modalities for healing. And I started seeing a yoga therapist. And it's amazing because it's like you have your own private yoga instructor, but they're not instructing you through a yoga class. She's instructing you through the types of work that it's going to take to heal the area of damage. So if you're interested in knowing who she is, I would highly recommend her. I think it's a very amazing thing. But anyway, in yoga, there's the warrior pose. There's the different poses, and there's these chest opening poses. And she says, imagine you're going to conquer the world with your heart.
Oh.
I love that. I love that. Let's do that. Let's just take a moment. Let's put our hand on our heart. Take a deep breath. If you don't know what the warrior pose is, then imagine yourself like this, like Superman, right? Superwoman, warrior, hero's pose. Now you're in hero's pose, right? And you go back to closing your eyes, hand on your heart. Using the power of your mind's eye. See yourself in the warrior pose, if you know what it is, or in the hero's pose. Now imagine that in this position, your heart is wide open. You're pulsating the light and the love from your heart out in the world. You're conquering the world with your heart. Say it inside, don't say it out loud. I'm conquering the world with my heart. I'm conquering the world with my heart. Here's my heart, Lord. Yes, let's do that. Conquer with love. Let's conquer the world with our hearts. Deep breath. Yes, let's do that. And then when you don't think you can, when you forget who you are, we get to the lesson 260. Let me remember God created me. Father, I did not make myself, although in my insanity I thought I did. Why? Because I made the ego. Yet as your thought, I am your thought, I have not left my source. It says our source is remembered, God is remembered, and therein we find our true identity at last. Holy indeed are we, holy indeed are you. Because our source can know no sin, and he who are his sons and daughters are all like each other and alike to him. So there's sometimes when, no matter how hard we try, we trip ourselves up. We don't love ourselves. We don't have enough compassion for ourselves. So, I told you earlier about this John Rodell. Well, I want to do a second one. Because it's like a little conversation with God. And I think it'll help us all bring the lessons to a finale. This is about learning to love ourselves, right? Because this whole lesson today is learning to have compassion for the part of our minds that lead us astray, having compassion for one another, let me remember that God created me, let me remember what my function is, all of what brings us to the realization that sometimes we have so much doubt for ourselves and about ourselves that we just don't believe it. So the opportunity is to know yourself deeper, listen to the voice that tells you who you really are, as opposed to the ego that tells you what you've done wrong. And we're going to follow up on Sunday. Come out Sunday night to the full moon, 7 o'clock, Lauderdale by the Sea. So, I have a little skit. I'm playing myself. Ben Praise is praying God. Hey, God.
Hello, my beloved.
I quit. I'm done. I'm finished.
With what?
This, talking to you, writing, whatever this is I'm doing, all of it. I have nothing left to say. I've poured out my heart to you, and nothing has changed. I've tried to build a compass out of words and poetry, yet I'm still lost. I've done my best to let my heart become a torch, but I'm still afraid of the dark. I'm still a fraud. Look, never mind. I don't even want to talk about it anymore.
I understand.
Goodbye.
I love you.
Well, if you love me, you wouldn't let me feel so broken.
If you would let me love you, then you wouldn't feel that way.
What? That's ridiculous.
You haven't learned. You haven't been shown what love is.
Of course I have.
Can you love yourself?
What does that have to do with it?
Will you love yourself? Look at me. Do you look at me? Do you love yourself? Look at me. Can you answer the question? Do you love yourself? You cannot know what love is if you cannot show it to yourself. How can you receive love from me or anyone else if you can't even offer a morsel of it to yourself? Loving yourself is the first step to being able to recognize it when it's coming from somewhere else. To know love, you must first love the gift of your own life.
I can't hear this today.
That's what you always say, but today is the day when you have to stop treating your life like it is some cosmic mistake. Today is the day when you have to choose between the horrible lies you tell yourself about your worth and start believing the truth of how much of a marvel each and every breath you take is. Today is the day when you must finally love yourself before it's too late. Unlearn your self-loathing. Learn to love yourself. Tell yourself, I am so glad you were born. You are a gift to the world. And if you tell yourself that, you will become that.
I can't. I quit. I'm leaving.
Well, I'm not.
God?
Still here.
Okay, thank you. I keep saying goodbye. God keeps saying, still here. Goodbye, goodbye.
Still here. Still here.
In the shadow of my despair,
Divine love brings a candle and a mirror to me as I lay on the floor.
I can wait, Spirit says, with a voice that whispers lightly in my heavy veins.
For what? I ask under my jagged breath.
Holding the mirror up to my face, God says,
For you to finally see how beautiful you are.
goodbye, goodbye. I weep.
Still here. Still here.
Scene.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Ben. So, there'll be tickets to the next show. We'll let you know when that is. So you guys, come out Sunday night, those of you who are local. We're going to have a nice cleansing ceremony on the beach. Tonight's ending song is a Hebrew song. It's really beautiful. It's by the Platt brothers. And Ben Platt is the Broadway actor who is the lead actor in the show.
Dear Evan Hansen.
Dear Evan Hansen.
He's also the politician, I think, too.
Dear Evan Hansen. It's a play that I think they're turning into a movie. And
It is a movie.
it is a movie. And so the closing song is he and his brothers. Please enjoy and stay for the finale.
Israel.
beautiful.
Is that like an album, or is that just that one song?
I think it's just that one song. Every video I've seen is them practicing. So it's very beautiful. That is Ahat Olam. It is the second prayer that's said during evening services. And it means eternal love. And so, once again, sacred day. We send blessings to one another. We see our names inscribed and sealed in the book of life, knowing that we are loved, knowing that we are beloved. And we look to one another as beloved as well. And while we still remain outside the gate of heaven, let us look on all we see through holy vision and eyes of Christ. Let all appearances seem pure, that we may pass them by in innocence and walk together to our Father's house as brothers and sisters and holy children of God. That's who you are. That's who we all are. Amen. God bless you. See you next week.